Anyway, the breaking news tonight is that we've gotten a word now that gotten out that through Chris Ruddy, a close friend of President Trump, who tells PBS's Judy Woodruff that the president's considering perhaps firing Robert Mueller as special counsel. Joining us right now by phone is the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff of California. Congressman, what do you make of this? Why are they putting out the word through Newt Gingrich and now through Chris Ruddy to Judy Woodruff? Why do they want the word out there that the president wants to fire the guy who might be prosecuting him?
You know, I can only imagine that this is just part of the effort to tear down now Bob Mueller. They began the campaign, obviously, to tear down James Comey, but it's continuing with Mueller. They're clearly afraid of Mueller and his independence and the thoroughness of the investigation he's likely to lead. I can't imagine that they're going to be crazy enough to go through with this threat. But then I never thought they would really go through with firing James Comey. So you can't exclude the possibility, but I think it's just a way of raising doubts about this, very good man who's respected by people on both sides of the aisle.
Well, wouldn't they face the inevitability of a replacement? Perhaps, I don't know if you can do better than Robert Mueller. Is that their thinking, that you can't get a tougher prosecutor? If he finds a way to sack this one, he may get a weaker person to replace him.
Well, if that's their hope, it's not going to work, because what this would prompt if he were to fire Bob Mueller, Congress would immediately take up legislation to reestablish the independent counsel law that expired, and we would appoint Bob Mueller. The president is not going to get to pick the person who investigates these allegations. There's just no way, I think, even this Congress could sit for that.
Yeah, you can't pick your prosecutor. Here's what Newsmax CEO Chris Ruddy, as I said, a close friend of President Trump, said on PBS tonight. Here he is.
I think he's considering perhaps terminating the special counsel. I think he's weighing that option. I think it's pretty clear by what one of his lawyers said on television recently. I personally think it would be a very significant mistake, even though I don't think there's a justification. And even though, I mean, here you have a situation—
You don't think there's a justification for
a special counsel in this case?
Well, Congressman, let me ask you about this other thing. What do you make of this new development that'll probably be taken up by the Senate, your Senate counterparts tomorrow, that the Attorney General, who's certainly been problematic in this whole matter, turns out he may have had another meeting with the Russians last year that he never accounted for, never admitted to?
Well, that will certainly be a topic during the hearing tomorrow, and that is, did the Attorney General disclose any and all meetings that he had with Russian officials? We know that he didn't disclose that during his testimony, but he later supplemented his testimony. Now there's an allegation that even the supplement wasn't accurate. That's pretty serious business, and I'm sure the Senate's going to want to ask about that, but they're also going to want to seek to corroborate what James Comey testified. Was he asked to leave the room by the President of the United States? Did he have a conversation thereafter with the President about his discussion with Jim Comey? And did Jim Comey, as he testified, later have a conversation with Mr. Sessions where he said, don't leave me alone, effectively, with the President again?
Do you think he's honored his recusal from any Russian matters? I mean, I alluded particularly to his sitting there when they fired Comey, who was fired because of prosecuting the Russian connection, and then have the Attorney General sit there and go along with it, the firing.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. How do you honor a recusal that says, I won't be a decision maker when it comes to the Russia investigation, and then recommend that the top guy who's doing the investigation be fired? It just doesn't add up. And in fact, at the time of that Rosenstein memo and the Attorney General's own letter, my observation was the principal problem with the Rosenstein memo, and this was before we found out it was just a pretext, is it was addressed to the Attorney General, who had recused himself. So, no, he absolutely hasn't honored that, and much as we have tried from Rod Rosenstein and others to find out what exactly are the parameters of this so-called recusal, we have not been able to really get a clear answer.
When Richard Nixon, the president at the time in the 70s, wanted to fire, in 1973, wanted to fire Archibald Cox, the independent counsel at that time, he told the Attorney General to do so. Elliot Richardson had committed himself to the Congress not to do so, refused to do. He had to resign. They did the same thing with Ruckelshaus, the Deputy Attorney General. He had to resign. He was fired, actually, and they had to go to Judge Bork to get anybody to do it, the Solicitor General. What would happen this time if the president told Jeff Sessions to fire the special prosecutor? What would happen, do you think? Wouldn't he have to quit too?
Well, I would think that the Attorney General, should have the character to resign. Certainly, given that he's recused himself, he could take no part in that decision. I would hope that Rod Rosenstein would resign before he would implement that kind of a dictate from the president. But I feel very confident that we would move quickly in Congress, and I think we might even find the Republicans standing up to this president and reestablishing the independent counsel, which is probably the last thing that this president would want to see. But, of course, this wouldn't be the first time that the president took action that ultimately was very detrimental to his own personal interests.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.